I'm going to show you how to optimize your physical posture so perfectly that sitting at a desk for 8 hours actually feels energizing. I'll do this by sharing 12 movement principles that eliminated my back pain and brain fog.
Okay, wow.
In the next 20 minutes, you're going to learn how to transform your daily physical energy using targeted micromovements.
When we look at the biomechanics of modern knowledge work, we have to move past that basic tired advice of, sitting is the new smoking.
Right, yeah.
Because anyone listening to this deep dive already knows that being glued to a chair for 8 hours is detrimental. The real question is how to dismantle the mechanics of that fatigue without losing your productivity.
Exactly, because you still have to get the work done.
Right. And the research we are looking at today, it completely challenges the narrative that mental drain is just this unavoidable thing. We're going to extract the most vital, transformative principles from these 12 movement hacks. We are examining a biological system that proves you can actually generate energy throughout the day, rather than just, slowly leaking it away into your keyboard.
Let's test the mechanics of that, because the promise of feeling energized after a full day of deep work sounds like a stretch to anyone who routinely hits that 3.0 p.m. wall.
Oh, absolutely.
But the approach here lays out a very specific anatomical roadmap, starting with Principle 1, the 20-20 rule. Because most people stare at a screen until their eyes literally burn. The protocol dictates that every 20 minutes you look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
The direct physiological connection between visual strain and cognitive exhaustion it's just so often ignored. When we talk about brain fog, we tend to treat it as a lack of mental stamina. But staring at a fixed, backlit point 2 feet away for prolonged periods, it requires this intense, continuous isometric contraction of the ciliary muscles in your eyes.
So your eyes are literally flexing the whole time.
Yes, those muscles are working overtime to keep the lens focused on a close-up target. And when those muscles spasm from overuse, it triggers a cascade of fatigue signals straight to the visual cortex.
Wow.
That localized muscular strain in the eye translates almost directly to that systemic feeling of mental sluggishness you were talking about.
Okay, but looking away for 20 seconds sounds almost too easy, Can 20 seconds really undo 20 minutes of intense visual locking? Or is it just a minor placebo effect?
No, it is a physiological reset, not a placebo.
Yeah.
When you shift your gaze to an object at least 20 feet away, those ciliary muscles finally release their contraction. The lens flattens out. 20 seconds is the minimum biological window required for those muscles to fully relax and for that spasm cycle to break. It literally stops the fatigue signaling to the brain. You are actively preventing the accumulation of microstress that eventually manifests as the 3.0 p.m. wall.
That reframes the entire concept of taking a break. It's not about losing focus. It's about mechanical maintenance. Remember this formula: 20 minutes, 20 feet, 20 seconds.
Stick it on a Post-it note.
Seriously. Put it on your monitor. Okay, that was the first point. Let's move to Principle 2, which tackles the literal weight on our shoulders, the cervical glide, or as it's often called, the chin tuck.
Yeah, to understand why this movement is critical, we have to look at the anatomy of forward head posture. The average human head weighs about 10 to 12 pounds.
Heavy.
Right, so imagine holding a 12-pound bowling ball. If you balance it perfectly upright on a solid wooden dowel, it feels relatively weightless. The structure supports the mass. But the moment you tilt that dowel forward by just a few inches, the leverage changes dramatically. Suddenly, you have to grip the dowel with incredible force just to keep the ball from snapping it.
And in this scenario, our neck muscles are doing the gripping.
Precisely. For every inch your head drifts forward while reading an email, it adds about 10 extra pounds of load to the cervical spine and the suboccipital muscles right at the base of your skull.
10 extra pounds per inch.
Per inch. So by midday, those muscles are screaming, which restricts blood flow to the brain and frequently causes those tension headaches. The chin tuck micro movement is about reversing that leverage.
So you just tilt your head back?
No, you don't tilt your head up or down. You pull your entire head straight back horizontally, giving yourself a double chin. You are sliding the bowling ball back to the center of the dowel, instantly relieving the mechanical load on the back of the neck.
It's amazing how much of our mental fatigue is actually just our muscles screaming from poor leverage.
It really is.
Which leads us to Principle 3, the doorway stretch. Because we've fixed the neck, but the rest of the upper body is still caved in.
Yeah, the biomechanics of typing naturally force the shoulders to internally rotate, and the thoracic spine, that's the upper middle, back to round forward. This creates a state of chronic flexion.
Right.
Over time, the pectoral muscles in the front of your chest become adaptively shortened, while the muscles on your back become overstretched and weak.
Imagine your spine is a rubber band. Sitting hunched over pulls it incredibly tight in one direction. Hour after hour, you are pulling and pulling that rubber band tighter forward. We need to snap it back the other way every time you walk through a door.
That rubber band metaphor beautifully illustrates the concept of reciprocal inhibition.
Okay, what is that?
Well, you cannot simply tell your back muscles to relax if your chest muscles are physically pulling them forward. The doorway stretch uses the architecture of your environment to force extension.
By leaning through the door frame.
Exactly. By placing your forearms on the sides of a door frame and gently leaning your chest forward, you are physically stretching the straightened pectoral muscles. As those chest muscles lengthen, it signals the nervous system to let the back muscles finally relax. You are actively reversing the hunched kyphotic curve that desk work creates.
I can already picture the weird looks from Gary in accounting when I'm stretched across the break room doorframe like a bat. But hey, the physical relief is immediate. You are quite literally unwinding the damage of the desk.
Absolutely.
But I hear this list growing, and the immediate reflex for any high performer is defensive. You look at a calendar packed with back-to-back meetings, and you might say, I don't have time to do physical therapy during the workday.
That is the most common resistance to this approach, and it requires a complete reframing of how we calculate productivity. These are not workouts.
Right.
They do not require a yoga mat, a change of clothes, or a dedicated 45-minute block. These are 30-second micro-movements. The critical insight here is that time spent fighting through physical friction is time wasted.
So it's an investment.
Yes. Taking 30 seconds does not steal time from your task. It restores the cognitive bandwidth required to finish the task faster.
Breaking that down, if you are sitting there with burning eyes, a throbbing neck, and a spine that feels like a tightly pulled rubber band, your cognitive output plummets. A report that should take 20 minutes drags on for an hour because you are fighting your own biology.
Exactly.
You're physically at the keyboard, but your brain left the building 2 hours ago.
The math heavily favors the micro movements. If you pause for 30 seconds to do a doorway stretch and a visual reset, you eliminate the sensory friction. The brain fog clears and your focus sharpens.
Because you aren't fighting the pain.
Right. Because your baseline efficiency is restored, you complete that report in the 20 minutes it was supposed to take. You invested 30 seconds, and you effectively bought back 40 minutes of your afternoon. These principles act as time multipliers, not interruptions.
Okay, that covers the upper body and the productivity math.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's move down the kinetic chain, which leads us to principle 4. The seated glute squeeze. This addresses something I didn't even know had a medical name. Gluteal amnesia, or dead butt syndrome.
It sounds humorous, but the physiological impact is profound. When you sit in a chair, your hips are locked in a 90-degree angle.
Ike.
This position chronically shortens the psoas major, the primary hip flexor muscle that connects your lower spine to your femur. Simultaneously, because the chair is supporting your weight, your glute muscles completely disengage. They just turn off.
Imagine a tug-of-war where one team just drops the rope and walks away.
That is an incredibly accurate sensory metaphor. The hip flexors are pulling hard on your lower back, and the glutes, which are supposed to pull back and stabilize the pelvis, have dropped the rope.
And that causes the pain.
Yes, this imbalance is the root cause of most lower back pain in office workers. The psoas pulls the lumbar spine out of alignment. The principle for micromovement is simple. While seated, intentionally squeeze your glute muscles as hard as you can for 5 seconds, then release. Do it a few times every hour.
The beauty of this one is that it's completely invisible. You can be in the middle of a high-stakes board meeting, looking completely serious, while secretly rebooting your pelvic floor.
And by manually contracting the glutes, you are forcing the nervous system to send an inhibitory signal to those tight hip flexors, telling them to let go. You are picking the rope back up in the tug-of-war, stabilizing the lower back without even standing up.
Brilliant. Okay, let's move to principle 5. We're traveling down the arms now to an area that ruins careers if left unchecked. The wrists. The micro movement here is the prayer stretch.
The hands and wrists endure immense repetitive stress during knowledge work. Typing on a flat keyboard forces the wrists into constant slight extension and pronation.
Yeah, we're all just clawing at the keys.
Exactly. And the flexor tendons running through the carpal tunnel on the underside of your wrist become inflamed from the microtrauma of thousands of keystrokes.
Think of the median nerve in your wrist like a garden hose. When the surrounding tendons get inflamed and swell up, it's like someone stepping on the hose. The flow of nerve signals gets kinked, resulting in numbness, tingling, and eventually severe pain.
To take the foot off the hose, we have to stretch the flexors. The prayer stretch involves putting your palms together in front of your chest like you are praying and slowly lowering your hands toward your waist while keeping the heels of your palms pressed firmly together.
Oh yeah, you feel that immediately.
You will feel a deep, immediate stretch along the underside of the forearms. Doing this for just 15 to 20 seconds interrupts the cumulative tension that leads to repetitive strain injuries.
It's basically the antidote to the claw hand we all develop by 5:00 p.m. Okay, let's hit one more before we pull this all together, which leads us to principle 6. The seated calf raise. This one completely blew my mind because it frames a muscle as an internal organ.
The soleus muscle in the calf is heavily researched in the context of prolonged sitting. Because gravity pulls blood down into your lower extremities, your cardiovascular system relies on muscle contractions in the legs to pump venous blood back up to the heart and the brain.
Right, the pump.
When you are seated and perfectly still, that pump shuts off. Blood pools in the lower legs, which is why your feet might feel slightly swollen or cold after a long day. More importantly, it means less oxygenated blood is cycling efficiently through the brain.
So sitting still literally starves the brain of fresh oxygen flow. The micro movement here is essentially a calf push-up. While keeping your toes on the floor, you repeatedly raise your heels up and down as high as you can.
By engaging the soleus muscle in the calf, you manually activate what vascular specialists often call the second heart.
The second heart.
Yes. Those muscular contractions squeeze the deep veins in the lower leg, forcing the pooled blood back up against gravity. It increases systemic circulation and delivers a fresh supply of oxygen and glucose to the brain without elevating your heart rate or making you sweat.
It's like hitting a primer pump on an engine. Let's quickly recap the keys we just covered before we get to the ultimate payoff. We've explored 6 of the core biomechanical hacks from the research. We tackled visual strain with the 20-20-20 rule. We recentered the bowling ball of our head with chin tucks.
Yep.
We snapped the rubber band of our chest back with the doorway stretch. We re-engaged our glutes to save our lower back. We unkinked the garden hose in our wrists with the prayer stretch. And we pumped fresh oxygen to the brain using seated calf raises.
These 6 movements represent the mechanical application of the data. They systematically dismantle the physical friction points of desk work. But treating them simply as a checklist misses the deeper paradigm shift the research is driving at.
The bigger picture.
Right. All of these individual tactics point toward a much larger unified strategy regarding how human energy is generated and sustained.
Which leads us to the final principle. Motion creates emotion. This is where the framework completely flips our traditional understanding of motivation and fatigue.
We have a deep-seated tendency to overcomplicate our mental states. When we experience a lack of focus, lethargy, or that general mid-afternoon apathy, we default to psychological explanations.
We think we're just lazy.
Exactly. We think we lack discipline, we blame the monotony of the project, or we assume we have depleted some finite reserve of willpower. We treat mental stuckness as a purely psychological problem requiring a psychological solution, usually trying to mentally force ourselves to care.
But the data strongly suggests we are looking in the completely wrong domain.
Right.
We aren't mentally blocked, we are physically stagnant.
Exactly the point. The state of feeling mentally drained is incredibly often just a downstream symptom of physical immobility. You have been frozen in a static, hunched posture for hours. Blood flow is restricted, breathing is shallow because the diaphragm is compressed, and the musculoskeletal system is locked in tension. Your physical vessel is stuck. And because the mind relies entirely on the physiological systems of the body, for oxygen, for neurotransmitters, for sensory input, the mind also becomes stuck. You cannot reasonably expect dynamic, high-energy cognitive output from a physiological system that has been put into a state of near hibernation.
Move the body, and the mind will follow. That is the audio sticky note for you to carry into tomorrow morning. Move the body, and the mind will follow. Because we usually wait to feel energized before we decide to move. We think, I'm too tired to stretch.
And that is the trap that keeps people exhausted. The physiological reality is that motion is the generator of the emotion, not the result of it.
The generator.
Yes. If you want to experience the sensation of feeling energized, you must manually manufacture it through movement. The principles we discussed, the doorway stretches, the visual resets, the calf raises, they are the ignition sequence. By changing the physical inputs, you force a change in the biochemical outputs. You alleviate the strain, increase the circulation, and the unavoidable biological outcome is a sharper, more energized mental state.
It's like realizing you've been driving a high-performance car with the parking brakes securely pulled up. You keep pressing the gas pedal, trying to force yourself to focus, trying to push through the brain fog through sheer willpower, and you're just burning out the engine.
A perfect analogy.
These micro-movements are simply releasing the parking brake. Once you optimize your physical posture, sitting at a desk for 8 hours doesn't have to be a slow march toward exhaustion. You actually possess the mechanical levers to maintain focus and vitality.
It proves that desk fatigue is not an unavoidable tax you have to pay for doing knowledge work. It is a mechanical failure that you now have the specific 30-second tools to repair.
But fixing your physical energy is only the first step. If you want to learn how to aggressively slash your meeting times to free up even more of your day, click the video on the screen. Before we go, consider this. Emerging research into embodied cognition shows that physical posture doesn't just relieve pain, it literally alters your blood chemistry. Expanding your posture, like doing that doorway stretch, has been shown to temporarily decrease cortisol, your primary stress hormone, while subtly boosting testosterone, the hormone linked to confidence and risk tolerance. Ask yourself how much of your daily work anxiety isn't actually about the work at all, but is just a chemical reaction to sitting folded up like a laptop. Keep moving. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
You've made it this far, so why stop now? There are 2 videos on your screen right now that are perfect for you. Just pick the one that looks most interesting and let's dive back in.